Hey everybody, just a quick video check-in here. It is Thursday when I'm recording and posting this, um, St. Patrick's Day, the 17th, which is also the due date for Unit 2. So you may be watching this actually after the due date on Friday, but we are currently then working in or have just finished up Unit 2. So basically the first two units of our class have been pretty simple, basic introductions, and I had you do them, very similar things twice. Partly because the journal feature is nice, it's easy to include pictures, and it's kind of corny to say, but it makes an amazing difference to be able to actually see your classmates, and for me to see you and for you to see me. Obviously, it doesn't replace face-to-face, but at least it gives you a sense that there's other like real people that are part of your course. So that's the nice thing about the journal feature, and then the discussion board is it's really easy to interact, so you can post things but also comment on other people's posts. And that really simple discussion board assignment, even though it kind of repeats the introduction part, is just a good way of getting you used to using the discussion board because it figures pretty prominently throughout our course. So part of the purpose of that introduction, even though it repeated, was in some ways not about the introduction itself, but really just about getting you using the discussion board and used to the layout. And if you've done Blackboard courses before, you might be already familiar with that, but for those who haven't, maybe it's good to kind of jump in pretty early as far as the technical stuff goes. And it's pretty simple. Hopefully nobody had any major issues with it. So I just want to look then quickly at Units 2 and 3. 3 is due Monday, March 21st, so again, a quick turnaround. I'm just going to click into Unit 2 here. So pretty simple kind of groundwork that we're setting for ourselves in Unit 2, getting a little bit used to using literary terminology, and we're not interested in really abstract or, kind of odd or really jargon-heavy sort of language here. We just want to be thinking in sort of more literary terms as we read, which is, of course, in preparation for what we'll be writing. So even if you're thinking of, and again, it's not complex terms, it just is thinking in more sort of literary terms. So as you're reading the various short stories that we'll start with, for example, you can begin to think about or ask yourself questions that circulate around these literary terms. Simple things like, what's the setting? What sort of themes are emerging? What are these characters like? And of course, how do those things play together? Is there a way in which the setting reinforces theme, or in which characters kind of play off of one another, for example? So just having those sorts of literary terms, circulating for yourself can make ultimately the writing you're doing better by really informing the reading that you're doing. So in a strange way, you can begin to think about the reading as we get into it, really as the first step in the writing process. Often we think of those two as totally separate, but effective reading is really the first step to producing good essays, especially of the kind that we're writing. Discussion board in Unit 2, just having you reflect on the introduction or the introductory section of our textbook. Again, a fairly general discussion of this notion of literature. It's sort of a loaded term, and it sounds like someone's trying to be fancy when they use it. But one of the things that we kind of discover is that literature covers a really broad range of things and is often more about how we approach something than it is about the thing itself. So you can approach like a Shakespeare play in a non-literary way by just reading it for fun or going to see it for fun, maybe. You're not looking to analyze it. You're not thinking, I got to write an essay on this. I better pay really close attention. You're just, there for the experience. So a very literary kind of thing, but you're not treating it in a particularly literary way. Take like a more popular example of, TV shows and movies that we'd think more as sort of escapist. People just see them for fun, but they can certainly be treated in a literary way. So we think about analyzing them in terms of, again, theme, setting, character, all of those, literary terms that we've discussed. And so we then get into well, actually, the other thing I want to just draw your attention to, the very first part of Unit 2, was a little tutorial on avoiding plagiarism. And you really don't even need to have it explained to you what plagiarism is. Everybody knows. And it never fails. There's always a couple people at the end of the course because they're just, I don't know, freaked out about, I don't know, everything at that point, I suppose. They just make a bad decision and end up plagiarizing in that final paper, and just don't do it. I mean, I can't say it any more clearly. You get an F for the course. In other situations, plagiarism leads to like pretty serious academic things going on. So it's just bad news. Just, stay far, far away from even thinking about that. Again, remember this when you get sort of nervous and time crunched and you make a bad decision. You just don't want to make that bad decision. So anyway, pretty simple stuff. Don't plagiarize. That's the policy. Unit 3 is really getting us into some of the most important stuff in our course, this idea of managing the general and the specific. So I'll have more to say about that. I'll let you work through the unit. Again, this one will be due Monday. But this is a perfect instance where we get into like content of the course, and you want to be working through that content thinking, okay, how can I reflect this when I go to write my essays so that Professor Snart sees I'm getting the content because he's seeing it in my essay. Remember that equation between coursework and assessment is really connected, just like it is in other more obvious situations where you learn a date in class and then you're tested on what's that date and you just fill it in. This is the same sort of stuff, even though it's not quite so informational or trivial, but not in that negative sense, just like very, particular pieces of information. We're thinking more in terms of concepts, but the idea is the same. You take that concept and you apply it to the writing that you're doing, and that's where I need to see it. So just be sure you're thinking about that as you work through the content, the concepts that we're now getting into. And then again, lots of examples here. I'm just scrolling down. It should be relatively clear. That's sort of how the course is designed. But again, if you have questions or concerns or anything coming up, just be in touch with me and I'll talk to you soon. Happy St. Patrick's Day.